Hello, 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 hello. We're going to cover Start of Hell today. I have realized that, well, not realized, but I saw Avenged Sevenfold doing stuff like this with their songs. They go through all the stems and stuff, they break down everything, and I thought it would be cool if I did stuff like that for my own songs. So, I asked some friends what songs I should cover, and they have listed two of them. The first one being Start of Hell. So that one is what we're going to cover today. Start of Hell was the lead single off of my previous record, The Aftermath. I have a new song dropping this Saturday. That's going to be the lead single of the upcoming record, the new one. But as that song's not out yet, I can't exactly do a breakdown of that. I mean, I could, but I wouldn't be able to post it right away. So, we're going to be covering Start of Hell. Now, Start of Hell is one of my longest songs I've done to date. I think it is my longest song to date. This was the very first song made. It was originally written back in 2017. Towards the end of it, although elements of it, the bridge, were actually from mid to late 2016. And at one point, this song was considered for Fire Rising. We actually made a demo for it and everything. But it got scrapped. And we started working on the songs that eventually made it to the first EP instead. But this at one point was meant to be a Fire Rising track. So a little fun fact there. We're going to go ahead and, because the bridge is the oldest part of this song, let's try and find the bridge. That's the chorus. He's dead. Right here. Okay. Now, first things first, you'll notice I added reverb to this song. I have not done this with any other song I've done. I did it with this song because I had heard those acapella things from, Chester Bennington and whatnot, and they would use reverb constantly, and most people use reverb. So I just spammed the hell out of reverb on this song. You can hear it if I solo it. You can hear it especially clearly here. So one last time. It sounds like I'm in a chamber. That is the reverb. I didn't really like how it turned out on here. It sort of sounded too cathedral-ish. I didn't really want to change it because I figured it's not bad enough to bother changing. But it's something that I probably wouldn't do again. This was my first time using Mixcraft. Up to this point, I'd always used Audacity. So, that's why the drums, if you see, they're one super long track. How I did that is I would take, let's play the chorus, for example. The drums are pretty simple on this song. But what I would do is because I need to split the snare and the basic track, I would set all of it onto this one basic track with the snare included, but the snare was too quiet compared to the rest of it, so I moved the snare onto a separate track. But in order to do that, what I decided to do is I took every single section that I had made, and I made several different sections. I recorded a verse section. I just showed you the chorus, the bridge. There was something for everything. And I looped it up like I do with everything else here. But I combined all of that into one super long track, as you can see. And that's why this is so all over the place with the mixing and stuff. You can see the mixing line here. This is the mixing line. This is where it shows you how loud it is in relation. So the basic mix here is at -0.9, so about -1 decibels. And you can see the line here. You can see how I edited it on top of this bass. So like here, it's 1.1. This means that this is, in all reality, this is actually 0.2 decibels. So that's just slightly louder from bass 0. This right here is 0.0. So this is exactly -1 or 0.9. And I just combined it all together into one super long track. I copied the snares, as you can see here. From this track, I just pretty much did this. I don't really use rim shots in my songs. So what I just did is I just did this throughout the whole thing. I combined it all into one track, did that copy, and then I just pasted it here. So that's why this is all one long track. But yeah, that's pretty much about it with the drums. There's nothing special about them. You can hear they're very simple on this song. They're probably some of the most simple drums I've done. And that's not... Part of that is because I was just getting used to the program, but the main reason is just because this song didn't really call for it. Like, this isn't the kind of song that you would put, you know, really complex drums on. Like, I mean, let's just listen. Hold up. Oh no, I'm hitting the wrong buttons. Hold up. Let's just listen to the instrumental and you hear what I mean. I mean, that's all you really need for the drums. You don't need anything big here, which is really good. So that's pretty much what the drums are on. I said we were going to break down the bridge first because that was the first thing that was done. Was this it? So what happened here is this was originally written for a song titled A Million Ways, this bridge. The lyrics were different, the vocals were different, but the instrumental was pretty much how it was back then. I saw that I could put it into this song super easily and seamlessly, so I kind of built the rest of this song around that while also keeping in mind the original version of this song. So that's why, you know, it all sort of fits so seamlessly. A large part of it was built around this. Now, we're going to sort of break this up in order. Let's go ahead and let's deal with the guitar and bass first. The bass just follows the guitar for all these heavy bits. There's really nothing that sticks out for this part of the bridge. So if we just solo both of them. I do want to make you one trick I like to do with the bass in order to prevent it from not... Because if you were to just straight up copy the guitar with the bass, like if you were to just copy this, and then you copy to this, you can hear the strumming is like... I only strum every other time here, as opposed to this one. And that's because whenever I do that with the bass, and I cut down the strumming with the bass as opposed to the guitar, it gives it a more streamlined sort of... It makes it feel... I don't know why it does this, but for some reason to me, it just makes it feel more polished. You'll also notice D4, C4. This is something I used to do. The bass is actually an octave higher than the guitar. That's because at the time I thought that was better. I only started rethinking how I did my bass later on, like near the end of the working on this album. There's only a couple songs where I start really using the bass the way I use it now. But at the time, on this record, on the previous records, the bass would always be an octave higher, because to me, for some reason, it just sounded like it fit well. Because it makes the bass sound a bit more prominent, as well as, you know, I don't know. I don't do this anymore, so I'm kind of talking out the ass here, but it makes it sound more prominent. My thinking back then, I know, was it makes that sound more prominent. It makes it a little more like you can hear it easier. I think that was the main reasoning behind me doing stuff like that at the time. But yeah, and the strings pretty much sort of serve to support this. And you'll see I don't have a strum with the strings, and that's because there's no need to. They're meant to sort of be a drone kind of thing that helps thicken the sound of the bridge. So let's remove the strings for a second, and let's bring back that is okay. Let's bring back. Oh, we can bring that back. Where do I even use? Oh, way at the beginning. Okay. But yeah, this is what it would sound like without those strings. Oh wait, wrong bit. And this is how it sounds like with the strings. It really adds like an extra sort of punch to it to me. It doesn't sound as naked without the strings, if that makes sense. And that's really the main thing why I did those. That's usually how I wind up using strings a lot of the time. Not all the time, like you can hear at the beginning and the end, the strings have their own section. So as this all fades out, there's like this whole section that's just orchestral strings. And you can see the chords down here. Heck is that? There's like something. You see that? I've never noticed this before. What? What? That's... Huh. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. That bit right there, I've never noticed that before. That was not supposed to be there. I mean, it's so short you don't even notice it, but yeah, you don't even hear it. Actually, if anything, it kind of gives it a little more streamlined. Yeah, it gives it slightly more seamless, but like, yeah, that wasn't supposed to be there. Oops. Oh well, it doesn't matter. And then we have like it just some chords, and then at the end, I put a break here, because I wanted to. I don't even remember why I put a break there. I think it adds to it. I wanted to add a little bit of tension to this ending here. It adds a little bit of tension with that edge, and then it has the ending hit. The reason why the beginning has something similar too, if we go back to the beginning. Now this one isn't as sort of complex as that one is, of course, just you can look at that, but it is sort of an extra beginning. A lot of that was inspired by Underground. You'll notice that this song is pretty much the same song as Underground. I mean, it's like, why is that? Okay. It really is the same song as Underground. The only real difference is the verses are like soft, whereas Undergrounds are pretty heavy. Because Underground you have that da-na-na-na-na-na-na, and this doesn't really have such a riff. But otherwise, it's basically the same song. If you've heard Starterfire, you've pretty much heard Underground. And that wasn't necessarily intentional. I was just focused on remaking a song that I had written in the past. And I didn't really realize how similar it was to Underground until later on. But we've covered the bridge, we've covered sort of the intro and outro. I don't know if there's really much to cover with the chorus. It's just that over and over again. Yeah, and you can still hear the strings there. So I muted it there for a second because those strings are super quiet, but I wanted to sort of show that you can still hear them. But yeah, and then it fades out and goes into the verse. Let's cover the verse. I don't know really what I could talk about with the chorus that I haven't already mentioned with the bridge. So, the verse, you can hear, has mandolin. You can hear, that's the mandolin. And I would use mandolin a lot, and I guess somewhat do this every once in a great while, but at the time, I usually used mandolin as sort of the replacement for soft guitar because it was the best thing I could find for what I was looking for. But you combine the mandolin with the bass here. And you can hear the bass is very different here. The bass goes... the bass and the mandolin take very different routes here. So if we were to just get rid of the mandolin, and that's pretty much just, it adds thickness, and also A, it allows the bass to have its own little moment to shine. B, it adds thickness to the mandolin because when you put them together, it adds some extra depth and dimension with the bass going up and having a different melody. It adds some extra dimension to the track. And then you have, again, the drums, which I've covered before. There's nothing really complex about these. And then it goes into the pre-chorus. And the pre-chorus and the bridge and everything and the outro and stuff is all the same. This is really the last bit that we need to cover. So let's take away the drums. We'll actually talk about the drums a little bit, because this is like the one part of the drums where there is actually probably some stuff worth mentioning. But let's combine the metal with the bass. This is a C2 note, so that's why this is so low. And the bass has this extra note here. It's C3, of course, like I was talking about earlier. But it has this extra note here. And that is because if that was to not be there, it would just be drums. And I didn't want it to just be drums for this section. I did want there to be like a little bit of a droning thing. So the bass I tend to use for that kind of effect when it comes to stuff like this. I don't know exactly what else to talk about here other than this is like a really heavy pre-chorus. It might be the heaviest part of the song. Let's talk about this bit. And you can hear this part is higher. It's almost an octave higher, not quite. So that way it bleeds into this bit a lot better. It's much more seamless transition when this is higher up than the pre-chorus. That is why it's like that. And again, I'm using that drone effect here. But I'm actually strumming with it to add some more extra, I guess, heaviness to it. Because if I was to bring in the... I did... One thing I do want to mention with the vocals, this was the last time I used my old style of growling. So usually I used to growl, I used to sort of have it be in the middle of the throat, if that makes sense. For those who don't do growling, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about here. But it used to be sort of in the middle of the throat, and it was like this really guttural kind of growl, and that's kind of what you hear here. My eye, take my eye! But after this, I discovered a way to sort of make it come from like the top of my throat, and I can just have sort of the energy just funnel through the throat and have the sound come from the top, if that makes sense. So that's why my growls now sound different than they used to. If you notice, my growls today sound a lot more different and more clear than they used to, compared to like the earliest albums. So that is why. That's one little thing I wanted to touch on. And then you have this. Little transition bit. And now the bass and the metal in this guitar are on the same bit, are pretty much the same, and that is to just add some extra stuff to it, you know. So let's talk about the drums. The drums, when we put them in here, I don't know, is this drum same here, or is this different? This is different. But this fits. Alright, so we'll talk about these a little bit separately, but... So this is the drums for the pre-chorus. And you can hear, especially this bit right here with the kick, it sort of goes along with the strumming. So if you listen, let's get rid of the bass. It adds some extra depth and heaviness. Drums can really bring out the heaviness of a riff. Like, you can have this really heavy riff, and it won't mean shit without the drums. The drums really change the song. And you can hear pretty much the little fill bits. It's just a crash and a snare, just twice, and that's pretty much the extent of it for the fills and whatnot. So let's talk about the ending, because the ending is slightly different. You can hear it's I don't know if the snare is the same. No, I think the snare's the same. But you can hear, let's zoom in. I think we're about here. Yeah, the crack cymbal's pretty much cut in half. Whereas before there was a crack cymbal here, every half or every like quarter note, if that makes sense. Now it's just every half note. And that is to add some extra intensity to the ending here, because the less crash you have, generally, the heavier it is. Now, that's not like to a point where you just take away all the crash and boom, it's heavy. You need crash. You definitely need crash. But if you really want something heavy, you need to find that perfect balance. It's a yin and yang sort of thing. The less crash you have, the heavier it is. But there's a point where there's just not enough crash. Even when you're trying to make it as heavy as possible, you need crash. So, this is how it sounds. There's also less kick to, again, add to that intensity. And it really shines here. Here it's pretty much, a basic, it's pretty much a consistent every like whole note, every measure there's one snare about midway through the measure. That's pretty common. That's pretty basic. But you'll notice here, first off, ignore the fact that these are longer than the others. That's just me being a little bit sloppy. It doesn't really matter because either way it causes the same sound. So if I was to take this away, let me show you. It causes the same sound. Yeah, it's the same thing, because those notes aren't held anyway, so it doesn't matter how long you make them. As long as you don't make them so long, they run into other notes. But you can see, it's a pattern of triplets here, so. It's a pattern of triplets, pretty much. Not quite. If you were to switch it to triplets mode, there would be a couple inconsistencies, so it's not a true triplet, but it's sort of inspired by that, if that makes sense. And it's sort of like quarter triplets and whatnot. So that's sort of what's going on there with the kick. Not much more to talk about there. Other than you'll notice sometimes I'll be using open hi-hat. And that's sort of to just, I guess, signal in a new section, add a tiny bit more variety, so it's not just monotone the whole way through. And the strings do exist through here. They do not exist in the pre-chorus, because the pre-chorus is like almost an octave down. It doesn't really need strings here, but because this one's higher up, this needs strings. And this is what the strings sound like. And you can hear even the strings cut out here to allow the bass to have that droning effect. But here it's all connected, like the guitar. And it just adds some extra depth. So that's really about it that I could talk about with this song. There's not too much else I can talk about. Lyrically and stuff I could always talk about, but that isn't really so much breaking down as it is talking about the meaning. So that's not really, I don't know if that's really appropriate for this video. Backing vocals and stuff, usually, I'll talk a little bit about this just to get this stuff out of the way. But the truth is I haven't tried. Let's actually get rid of the instrumental here. so we can talk about the vocals a little bit. So usually with raps, I tend to add like. But the truth is, I haven't tried. I tend to double track these quite a bit because it adds some extra depth and intensity and allows me to have backing vocals in the raps. Because you can't always sing over rapping. Sometimes you can, but this isn't the case where you really can. So here's another little bit of backing vocals in the chorus. We brought you to eternal sleep. And usually I use these to sort of thicken out the sound and add, I guess, more emphasis on the vocals, as well as adding more notes that I can't really just use. And you'll notice that the second half of this, I do not know what you've been through, but I would do the same for you. So take my hand to hold on to. You can hear that this lasts for the whole thing, whereas the first half just is only like this one. Oh my god, don't tell me I just fucked something up. No, okay. No, this is, I was watching Mike Shinoda. This is the only bit where backing vocals exist, is for this one line. That is because I like to have the second half of the chorus feel more intense than the first half. So that's why usually whenever there's two halves of a chorus, the second half usually has more going on in the background than the first half. And that sort of stays the same. And that sort of applies here as well to the verses. I don't do this with every verse, but I do this with a lot of verses. Second verse usually has some extra stuff going on. You set me free. You left a legacy. There's not much else to talk about here. Lost your wings and down you fell. I think we could talk about away, so take the soul of mine. This is a weird case where I do actually have backing singing vocals over the growling. So take the soul of mine, 'cause when your time is not too late, you will be renewed. I'll fade away. And sometimes I like to do that again to add intensity and sort of just have a clean vocal version running in the background, because it sort of removes some of the harshness of the vocals of the growling, I find. You'll notice here this is a different growl than the rest of it. So let's remove this, and you'll hear this is growl 1. And then this is growl 2. You'll hear that's higher up. I was trying to get like a really high, like sort of breathing in kind of growl here. So like, yeah, I can't really do it too well on the rim, but you can hear it. I was trying to get it as high as possible in sort of like a breathy coming in kind of thing that you hear in some deathcore. I can't really do that too well, so that's what you got. That's what you get, and you better stick with it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I was going for there. And here's something I like to do at the time. You'll notice that this fades. We'll just add that. You'll add that fade, like that literally fades away as the rest of it fades away. You can hear it getting quieter and quieter, and you can even see it here on the map. See, it starts out pretty loud, and it just slowly gets softer and softer. For the most part, it gets a little bit louder at the end for whatever reason, but for the most part, that's pretty much how it is. And there's a second growl going on here, or is this clean vocals? That's clean vocals. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on there. And I like to do that because it sort of adds to the fade out and the transition from like the heavy stuff to the soft stuff. I like to do those transitions a lot because I just think they're really, really cool. So that's another little thing about this song. Otherwise, I don't know what else I can talk about with this song. I've pretty much covered everything. We've talked about the drums, the verses, bridge and chorus. Again, they're pretty much the same thing. A little bit about the vocals, a little bit about the orchestration. So yeah, that's really about it. The only other thing I could mention is the reverse cymbal was here just to add some extra depth to this transition, but that's kind of obvious. But yeah, that is it for Start of Hell. Next time we're going to talk about Sealed Your Fate. So if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. I have a new album coming out here very soon. In a couple days, there will be a new single. The lead single from that record will be dropping. So look out for that. And yeah, that's it for this video. See you guys next time.